That's something you can look into all by itself. But the Federal Reserve note, prior to 1913, that wasn't written on the money. So the majority of the existence in the United States, we didn't have a Federal Reserve. It was formed in 1913. Well, everybody talks about ending the Fed, so if we get rid of the Fed, does that mean the United States is sovereign again? Would we be in control of our systems? Would we regain our institutions where the people are able to control their government and everything falls back into place? Well, let's think about that. Prior to 1913, was there any corruption? Were the people in charge prior to 1913? Well, you got, basically the system was set up by Roosevelt, the system was set up by Wilson in 1913, right prior to World War I. All right, so we're going to investigate this potential option where, maybe is it the money changers or the usurers or the money power or the Money Cartel. That's what this group was known as prior to the Federal Reserve. So let's go back to Jesus' time. The only instance where he became violent was with the money changers. The only instance ever. The only time. So do you think he was pretty sure that there was a corrupt group that offended him so badly? The ultimate pacifist went to violence in this one instance. He went to the temple where the money changers were trading silver coins. Wow, silver coins. I thought that's good. All right, so here's Ben Franklin. What did he have to say about the money power? This is, 140 years prior to the Federal Reserve. The inability of the colonists to get control of their own money system was the primary cause of the Revolutionary War. They didn't teach me that in high school or middle school or college at all. You got to dig for this stuff and get your own education, and you learn what really goes on. All right, there's this guy, Nathan Rothschild. So he's a guy from, there's a Rothschild family that they had individual branches throughout Europe. He basically says, I care not what the politicians do with their laws. If you let me control the monetary system, I will control the country. And in this particular case, the country was, was England and Great Britain. So therefore, he controlled the British Empire, which at the time, the sun never set on the British Empire, just like it doesn't set on the American Empire now. All right, so let's go a little more forward. So did the Americans, the colonists, when they got rid of the British, did that mean they then were in charge, that the people were in charge then, the money changers were gone, or did it persist? Did this struggle persist against these money changers? Jackson fighting the money changers. His quote then is, "You're a den of thieves, and by God, I will rout you." What about presidents? These guys, how devious were they? Like, what would they do in order to gain power? Would they assassinate presidents? Well, Andrew Jackson, I was getting his name wrong there, Andrew Jackson was one of them for certain by the Biddle banking group, was targeted for assassination for ending one of the first private banks in the U.S. How about Lincoln during up to the Civil War time? This is pretty interesting. In this quote, it goes, I see in the near future a crisis approaching that unnerves me and causes me to tremble for the safety of my country. Corporations have been enthroned, and an era of corporations and an era of corruption in high places will follow. The money power of the country endeavor to prolong its reign by working upon the prejudices of the people until all of the wealth is aggregated in is aggregated in the hands, all of the wealth is aggregated in a few hands, and the republic is destroyed. Lincoln said this shortly before he was assassinated. All right, here we're going to move forward roughly 100 years, and I'm not sure how many people here. This is pretty famous, not you know, in school anyway, but executive order by John F. Kennedy was 1110, where he issued something called the United States Note. Now, if you look on here closely, rather than this saying Federal Reserve Note going across the top, it says United States Note. And if you look on the date that it was issued, was 1963. What else happened in 1963? Kennedy was assassinated roughly 2, 3, 4 months after this executive order was issued. Well, that's interesting. Well, here's another little nuance to the story. When they did the investigation of his assassination, it was called the Warren Commission. So the individual members are Warren Commissioners, and one of them was John J. McCloy. John J. McCloy was the former head of the World Bank. Now, can you give me any good reason why the head of the World Bank would have any expertise into the investigation of the assassination of a president? Do you think he was maybe there for another reason? What expertise would he have? Does he watch CSI a lot? Okay, so something's going on here. It's hard to believe that there's a shadow government. Is it possible? Well, I always like to use this example and make an analogy. Let's imagine, for instance, that I have a pool company. I'm a pool contractor, but it's very small. So it's individually held, even though it's a corporation. But let's say it was a big corporation. I had offices in 3 states, and I had it for 25 years. I'm a 25-year pool contractor, and my name is on the paperwork. My logo that I invented. I hired everybody. I bought the equipment. I shopped for the trucks. I got everything approved at the bank, etc., etc., etc. Well, let's say, for instance, I went bankrupt. Well, and I'm in a Chapter 11. Ultimately, I would still have my name on all of these, the letterhead. Nothing would really change. The customers wouldn't know. They would still be seeing basically the same product. Over time things might devolve because I wasn't as involved with the company, because an outside entity would be making all the big decisions. The outside entity would be the creditor, which is in charge of my bankruptcy. I wouldn't be making all the big decisions any longer. This outside entity would be. That's known as being a debtor in possession. I still have this company, but I'm the debtor in possession. An outside entity is making the decisions. Another way to look at that, there's this famous saying that you hear thrown around in older literature. It's the power behind the throne. Well, how is there a power behind the throne? Just imagine if there's like a boy king. There's an oligarch behind that king. Say he's like 12 or 13 years old, but he's still the king. So that power might just be a group of people, but it also might be some money power, such as during the Bank of England days. Well, I think something that's really impressive was whenever you're listening to Jefferson. I believe that banking institutions are more dangerous to our liberties than a standing army. If the American people ever allow private banks to control their currency, first by inflation, then by deflation, they shall wake up homeless on the continent that their forefathers conquered. So let's think of a quick example of that, how the money supply is manipulated and why they want to do that. Because if they have all the money in the world, why do they have to manipulate the currency itself? They can just live large. When you delve into this, it's not about profits. You don't need to profit when you can invent the money. It's a matter of control. It's a matter of keeping people weak and down and protecting their cartel, particularly over the money system. So what they do is they expand it, just like Jefferson explained, and we have the Roaring Twenties. So they give easy loans. They give you this false sense of prosperity because money's really easy to come by. With their media, they give you the impression that the stock market's just going to keep going up, the housing market's just going to keep going up. Well, then they contract the monetary supply, and because people are so in debt, when it contracts, they end up defaulting. And all of these loans, which were collateralized by real assets, the bankers repossess them all. And when these houses become repossessed, the people go homeless. And that's exactly what happened after 9/11. And remember, they had the 125% loans, right? Everybody remember that? They had the, what do you call it? The mirror. You know, if you can fog a mirror, you can get a loan, right? Well, they contracted the monetary supply after that. And then there's the collapse of 08 till now, and it's ongoing. So if we want a real revolution, we need to target the true enemy, that the top of the pyramid, the people who can invent their product, and that's the bankers. And the thing is, if we just end the Fed, we would essentially roll ourselves back to 1913, and we had, you know, probably 3 presidents that were assassinated prior to 1913. So these bankers had lots of money to cause mischief for hundreds of years. It's been around a long time, going back to Jesus. So what we need to do is realize that just ending the Fed or just getting rid of Bernanke, that's a good step, especially if people start to focus on those issues and delve into it. What we need to really focus on is monetary reform. All right, monetary reform is the first most important issue. It's the second most important issue, and it's the third most important issue, because everything else that is a form of corruption in our society, it's simply just a symptom. The cause of the corruption is the monetary system. And here's a universal truth for all of time and space. You can apply it to any situation, 100 years from now or 100 years in the past. Whoever controls the supply and distribution of money in any society will control that society. Period. That's end of story. That's how it works. And a way to view this is, if you base your money on debt, as we do today, the creditors will control that society. Well, who are the creditors? The bankers. All right. Well, the Ron Paul revolution is that we need to change everything and base our monetary system on gold and silver, because they can't just invent that. Right, and I do agree with that. You can't just invent that. The problem is the commodity brokers can control the supply and distribution of that money, so they can expand and contract the way Jefferson predicted. And by the way, that was these predictions were done when when Jackson was fighting the bankers. That was while he was on a silver and gold system. So these problems still occur while we're on a silver and gold system. The Great Depression occurred while we're in a silver and gold system. And ultimately, because the United States has little gold and silver, we're going to have to borrow it. If we had lots of money, if we had lots of gold and silver in the first place, we wouldn't be in all this debt. We're in debt already, so we're going to have to borrow more. And by the way, when we go to pay all these debts off that we owe into the trillions, if we go into a gold and silver system, that means we have to pay those debts back in gold and silver.